Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the COVID-19 talk brought to you by the ladies of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, Delta Mu Zeta chapter of Manhattan. We have Dr. Robin Hunter Buskey here tonight to present us with some vital information regarding the virus and the vaccine. I'm Dr. Michelle Stephen, your moderator, and we're honored to have the international president of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated with us, Valerie Hollingsworth Baker.
Good evening to my sisters, brothers, friends, and guests. I welcome you to our talk this evening about COVID-19, the basics. Now, you know, we've heard a lot about what has been going on. We've gone through a lot of seminars, we've gone through a lot of webinars, we've read, we've heard it on the news, but there's always something evolving each day. And now we have the vaccine. And I know many are, concerned about the vaccine, and they want to have, concrete answers, because we need to protect ourselves and we need to know what is happening so that we can do that. And I'm hoping that tonight you will hear some new facts and some facts that you've already known that may make you more comfortable to be able to make a concerted decision on what you would like to do. So I welcome you once again, and I thank you all in advance for coming out this evening to hear more facts about COVID-19 and the vaccine. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Grand Val, for being with us this evening. I'd like to take a moment to introduce the president of Delta Mu Zeta chapter of Manhattan, G. Joanne Yard.
Good evening. It gives me great pleasure to greet you this evening on behalf of the members of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, Delta Mu Zeta chapter for the COVID-19 talk. Our goal this evening is to provide you with information to help you decide if you and your family should take the COVID-19 vaccine. Dr. Robin N. Hunter Buskey, a senior physician assistant and captain with the U.S. Public Health Service Commission Corps, and is the chief for the Clinical Services Support Unit for Immigration Health Service Corps. With more than 35 years of clinical experience in various primary care settings as a PA and physical therapist, Dr. Hunter Buskey continues to serve target populations and improve access to comprehensive health care. In her role as a PHS officer, she has responded to international and domestic emergencies, including the United States response to the West Africa Ebola crisis, and more recently, served during this COVID-19 pandemic. Additionally, Dr. Hunter Buskey serves as a mentor and provides didactic and clinical education. She authored publications in peer-reviewed journals, and she volunteers with community groups. She has been a member of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated since 1980. She serves as a chair for the National Pan-Atlantic Council of Presidents COVID-19 Task Force. Her many professional achievements, awards, honors, and recognitions are a testament of her excellence as a healthcare provider and effectiveness as a healthcare leader and community servant. We are delighted to have her here this evening, and we welcome you to this event. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, President Yard. Now, a little bit of housekeeping for our ground rules. We will be taking questions and answers only in the Q&A box. So if you do have questions during the presentation, please be sure to post them in the Q&A box. Now, let's get this started. Dr. Robin Hunter Buskey, thank you again for joining us this evening and providing us with some great information. I'd like to start with the first question, which is, given the new strain of the virus, what scientific proof do the scientists have that the vaccination will work?
Well, Dr. Stephen, our family, brothers and sisters, that's a great question. So I'm going to hold you in pause as I run through this presentation and then answer some questions perhaps not answered in this brief talk. So I want to first start by thanking you for joining this conversation today. Your participation demonstrates your interest in being informed. And for that, I am grateful for this opportunity to help you. I am not paid to do this, but like you, I am a concerned woman of color from an inner city community. My role tonight is to facilitate sharing information you need to make an important decision about the COVID-19 vaccine. This decision does not come lightly. You have an opportunity to consider the sacrifices made by many others, some of whom did not have or were unaware of medical practices in the past, and they were victimized. Times have changed, and you have an obligation to gather the facts to make a decision, as if your life depends on it. Your life matters. I do not speak on behalf of any specific organization, my employer, or the government. What is said here is a compilation of information from many sources to provide information and resources for you about the COVID-19 vaccine. Here is what I hope to cover this evening. I will move quickly through this presentation. I will incorporate some of the questions already received and address as many as I can during the Q&A session that follows. I will provide resources for your continued access to credible information. This slide is very personal to me, and I am sure for many of you too. I cannot keep up with the ever-changing clock that continues to advance these statistics. I look forward to the day when this clock will stop. These days, everyone knows someone with COVID-19. The unsettling feeling in your stomach when you hear that should raise concern, as this virus has no boundaries. This slide puts COVID-19 in perspective. It was 1 year ago the first cases of this new virus were reported. The spikes of the coronavirus are relevant to how the first vaccines authorized for emergency use were created. I want to remind you that if you or a family member has a medical concern not related to COVID-19, please do not delay to contact your health professional. Accidents, heart problems, cancers, and exacerbation of mental health conditions still require proper assessment and treatment. You have heard about the risk for COVID-19 infection, age, ethnicity, pre-existing health conditions, and some who are not aware they even have an at-risk condition. Not often mentioned are things like tobacco use and obesity. There are many COVID-19 tests out there. Be aware that any test is only as good as the day the test was done. Having a negative test is not a free pass to let your guard down. Be mindful of who you are around. Travel is also a risk. At the start of this pandemic, more attention was placed on cleaning and disinfecting. In fact, commonly used surfaces and areas should continue to be cleaned regularly. Follow the advice of your local health experts when advised to self-isolate and/or quarantine. That means being shut off from others. The exact time based on whether you have had a known exposure, have symptoms, or a positive test. The resources on the CDC website will help define what you should do for you and your close contacts should any of these situations apply. People of color are at high risk for social reasons, including systemic bias and racism. Knowledge is power. Let's focus on some facts and science. If I get COVID-19, then what? Well, let me say this very clearly. There is no cure for COVID-19 infection. You have heard about many treatments, and some are listed here. You'll see the list with remdesivir, dexamethasone, and other things that you're hearing in the news. These treatments are basically for the symptoms and only support you so that your immune system will do its job to help you. Many will experience very minor symptoms, but there are some that will have very severe symptoms. The best treatment right now is prevention. Some of you work in situations that put you at risk, perhaps as a frontline or essential worker. Please accept this huge thank you. But as diligently as you protect yourself and others at work, you must do the same at home and in your community. This is hard to do, but you must. Some observations have found that health professionals increase their risk for catching or spreading COVID-19 in their community or at home. People of color are most affected and have the highest fatality rates from COVID-19. What makes this vaccine so important? We know that underlying conditions, and you see several of them listed there, and some are for children and adults, but other exposure situations increase risk. Hello, everyone out there. This is an emergency. Let's be open-minded to the options that are available to us. Base your conversations on science and the strategic approach taken for addressing the vaccine development and distribution. The proper investigation has been done. People that look like you and me were involved in every step of the process. No serious problems were reported. So what I'm going to do now is break down a few details about the vaccine so that you understand how we got to here. First, though, let me define vaccine hesitancy. Many of you may be experiencing this right now. If I could ask for a show of hands, I would ask, how many of you have taken your flu shot? Well, I already know that many of you have not taken your flu shot. So that means you have delayed or refused a vaccine despite availability. I hope by the end of our discussion this evening that you will reconsider and have vaccine confidence, and at a minimum, at least take your flu shot. Most vaccines boast 55 to 88% effectiveness. However, the COVID-19 vaccine given emergency use authorization offers 95% effectiveness. Those are pretty good stats in my eye. So bear with me here. I'm going to use this graphic to illustrate the process of vaccine development. Looking from left to right, you can see the progression of how a vaccine starts in the laboratory and gets approved for use. The orange band is the foundational research done in the laboratory. Once the organism and effective chemicals are identified, preclinical studies are performed. These can include animals and in some cases people. Due to historical issues near and dear to our people, steps to ensure appropriate scientific study is required to include specific questions that the scientists use to proceed with their investigation. Independent groups review the applications before any studies can proceed for human use. Then the phase studies begin. These evaluate the safety and effectiveness of the chemical compounds. At every time period, scientists review and present their findings. The data cannot be fudged. And like any other case where peer reviews are performed, professional colleagues can be quite critical about outcomes, especially because these studies impact the population's health. No one involved in research takes their job lightly. These steps all take time. In fact, some take years to perform, especially those of the early stages. Moving through these phases requires the support of volunteers. You have heard about studies seeking volunteers to enroll. This is important because in order to give information about the how, studies should have volunteers that look like us. Unfortunately, we do not participate in significant numbers, yet we want to know how these products impact us. In the case of COVID-19 vaccine, I assure you that no steps were skipped. Dr. Kizmika Corbett, a Black female, was involved in the basic research used for the creation of the COVID-19 vaccine. Let's be proud of that. Her work began before this virus was even known, and her contributions cannot be overlooked. So how did we get here so quickly? It's called teamwork. The virus takes no breaks, and the scientists did not take any either. There were no shortcuts. These scientists worked around the clock. So if you look in the center of this diagram, those blue bands are about where we are in the process. We now have emergency use authorization for vaccines, but we do not yet have vaccine approval. So why am I saying this? I want to be very clear and I want to be very transparent. Emergency use authorization is not the same as approval. That's because we have not completed all of the steps required for approval. But that does not mean the vaccines are not safe, and that does not mean the vaccines are not effective. Approval requires more information based on time. And as I said before, the clock continues. And this information will come. And once all accumulated, it will be shared with the appropriate groups and then confirmed. So, do you take the vaccine when it's offered? We'll answer that question in a few minutes. Is this virus a live virus? Well, no, it's not a live virus. And you may hear that because other viral vaccines were live viruses. But this one, the one approved for emergency use authorization, is based on mRNA science that is completely chemical. Genetic information was taken from the coronavirus and it was used to build the spike protein. When these proteins are injected, these cause cells to make spike proteins that, once released in your body, stimulate your immune system to make antibodies. So a closer look at these involved were Pfizer, Moderna, among other groups. But specifically, Pfizer and Moderna in each of their studies had nearly 10% Black study participants. Now, Blacks are approximately 14% of the population. So we fell short in achieving target numbers for volunteers. However, those are still robust numbers, and we need to thank anyone who stepped up to participate in these studies. It is based on their courage, and we need to strongly consider the important decision that you will need to make when it's your turn to decide about taking a COVID-19 vaccine. The Pfizer vaccine is recommended for 2 doses 21 days apart, and the Moderna vaccine is 2 doses that are 28 days apart. And both of these vaccines are recommended for adults. Additional studies are underway for children and others with special needs, including pregnancy. The concern about side effects related to these vaccines is very, very real. A sore arm, a headache, fever, fatigue, all are related to almost any vaccine that would stimulate your immune system for a response. But I want you to think about the alternative for just a moment. You know what these side effects are because we're telling you. But getting COVID-19 and not knowing what your symptoms are, and you could die, do you want to take that chance? Allergic reactions occur with many things: creams, lotions, foods, plants, insects, even medications. Is that a reason not to get the vaccine? If you have specific health concerns, please talk to your healthcare provider. Individual concerns are best addressed by the person or persons who know your health issues. So let's talk for a minute about trust. This gets to the core issue that many of us raise concern when we think about vaccines, treatments, and other modalities used for our health. We must acknowledge history, and we know that our past informs our future. At every phase of COVID-19, there were people of color involved. We should celebrate that. Hours of research, review, and being seated at the table. We can't say that for everything in our lifetime, but for this issue, it is very true. So what is herd immunity as it relates to the COVID-19 vaccine? We need 70% of the population immunized to achieve the level of protection that the virus can no longer spread. The United States has about 330 million people. To date, nearly 1 million have received a COVID-19 vaccination. Achieving herd immunity will take some time. That gives you time for informed decision-making. Please consider yourself, your friends, your family, and your community as you ponder your decision. Let me just give a quick highlight about the CDC, or Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and what their role is in this pandemic. They have a website that is updated often. Be aware that even before COVID-19 pandemic, there was a program called Vaccinate with Confidence, and it's a strategic framework that is used to hopefully encourage the public to take vaccinations. The strategy centers on a few points: providing clear and factual information, supporting the science, and engaging the community. Now, I know that the holidays are right upon us, and I'm sure many of you that are computer savvy have gone to something, Google, Bing, whatever you use to search, and you probably are familiar with Target, Walmart, and a host of other stores, including Amazon. So with the same vigor that you shop and look for bargains, I encourage you to go to the CDC site and explore the information there. Most of it is easy to read and understand. There are multiple ways that the CDC is going to be involved in this long-term vaccination process. They will be monitoring everyone who's willing in getting their vaccine for side effects or other outcomes. They've created apps, they will have a website, and they are looking to make sure that they can have contact with everyone who receives a vaccine. And I hope that for those of you who've already taken your vaccine, please accept my thanks. And please provide the feedback when requested so that others will know that you have contributed to increasing our knowledge and trust. Now on this slide, what you see here is some of the categories when you hear about 1A and 1B and 1C, et cetera, related to the phased approach for the vaccinations. As you know from the news, not all the vaccine is available to give everybody right now. We know that our demand is exceeding supply. So public health experts have made priorities, and the priorities were based on recommendations that took into account many factors. These factors included preservation of life, maintaining societal function, decreasing disease, and the reduction of burden on people already facing disparities. So it's really important that people get the vaccination to stop the pandemic. As you see in these categories, and this is really not a complete list, it's really just to illustrate it for you, that we are already moving through 1A, 1B, and 1C. And as more vaccine becomes available, everyone who wants a vaccine sometime in 2021 should be able to get one. Those are the projections. And if you or someone you know had COVID-19, they still should get the vaccine when it's offered. So I hope you can begin to appreciate the importance of the COVID vaccine. This is not going to cure the virus. We all want this pandemic to disappear. There is no conspiracy. And to reduce a potential double whammy, please get your flu shot. I can't even imagine having both COVID-19 and influenza at the same time. And unfortunately, there are some that are experiencing that today. If I already had COVID-19, should I get the vaccine? Yes. If I haven't gotten the COVID-19 vaccine yet and someone asked me, should I get it? Probably yes. And if you have any questions, please ask your healthcare provider. So this is a little commercial. I want to pause for a moment to mention some of the collateral issues related to this pandemic. We have endured many stressors for an extended period of time. These include economic, we've had weather phenomenon, we went from heat to cold, snowstorms, fires, we have COVID fatigue, we have our personal and professional challenges. Our communities are in pain. We know people who are hungry, people who are possibly going to lose their homes. Many are undergoing significant emotional distress, and yet it's faith that is the one thing we can rely on. How do we cope? How do we motivate? How do we address our loneliness? We need to keep our faith in the forefront. I'm going to say, I miss my hugs, and I'm sure you do too. How important touch is for each of us. The rituals of our get together. We're lost sometimes without them. Actually, these virtual encounters that we have, they do start to grow on you, but they're not quite the same. My ask is that you check in with your family, your friends, and others. The light at the end of this very long tunnel is on. And one day soon, we will gather and touch each other again. Let's work with our trusted leaders because they need us too. So what's next? I'm here because of the support and assistance of many, including the Divine Nine, our National Pan-Hellenic Council of African-American Greek letter organizations. We are fortunate to network with many groups integral to community engagement, such as the National Medical Association, the largest and oldest national organization representing African-American physicians and their patients in the United States. The NMA established its COVID-19 Task Force on Vaccines and Therapeutics to advise NMA members, healthcare partners, and patient constituents about the safety and efficacy of the COVID-19 vaccines and treatments. And they have participated in thoroughly reviewing the COVID-19 vaccine. Other groups who advocate on your behalf include the National Black Nurses Association that represents over 200,000 African-American nurses. We have the historically Black colleges and universities, including the Health and Human Services grantee, Morehouse College, the NAACP, the National Council for Negro Women, the Order of the Eastern Star, the Links. We have international statesmen and women, many community faith leaders, and the list goes on and on. We are fortunate to have so many advocates looking out for our health and safety. Let's not let them down. My thanks for every effort to provide messages at the level best understood by the community. Our best tool at this time continues to be prevention, and you should know and live the W's. Wash your hands, wear your mask, and watch your distance. Working together to combat misinformation is our responsibility. We yearn for gathering together for the next set of holidays, but to get through this winter, our steadfast prevention practices now will allow for a true and thankful future. We know who we can trust. I don't want to get political or religious, but suffices to say, keep your faith. Get the information you need to make an informed decision. Take personal responsibility for your decision. You may not want a COVID-19 vaccine today, but over time, you should continue to follow the science. Follow the trusted experts and utilize the best information available at the time when you're offered the vaccine. The collective voices, we share our facts, we have timely resources, and continue to stress prevention. So we cannot let up now. Please be prepared, protect, and perform your personal duty. You can serve as an ambassador in your community. If you don't have the answers to the questions that you seek, you can seek those answers. It is your obligation. Informed decision-making helps our communities. Here are the two websites. They were posted for you to explore. I put the CDC website because that will take you to the .gov site where they have the COVID-19 information about the vaccine itself, treatments, and clinical trials through the NIH, or the National Institutes of Health. And they are still enrolling volunteers if anyone is interested in pursuing that. I want to take a minute and appreciate your time and attention this evening, and my sincerest thanks to Delta Mu Zeta chapter of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated for your support and assistance with this program. Dr. Stephen, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Hunter Buskey. Wow, that was a lot of great information. So I'm going to rewind a little bit. I think I got a little bit ahead of myself and excited about all of this great stuff that we're learning. And you were so informative and so thorough. So given the new strain, we just heard about this new strain. Now we have a new strain. Given the new strain of this virus, what scientific proof do scientists have that the vaccination will work?
Well, thank you for this question. And before I answer any questions, I just want to state for those who may have joined us in progress that I am not speaking on behalf of any specific organization. I'm not speaking for my employer or for the government. These responses are based on information available to me and what I have learned about COVID-19 disease, treatments, and the vaccine. So reports are that that new strain that they've been talking about on the news is already here in the United States. And the vaccine developers are confident that the vaccines that have been developed will be protective against these strains. Only time will tell for true, but their confidence and the fact that you have to understand that viruses mutate. They want to survive. So they change to adapt to their host. And that's not a new phenomenon. But in general, when we create a solution, the solution tends to work. So I'm going to just wait this one out and let the information come to us. So if you continue to hear more information about this new virus strain, let's go back to the sources and read and learn the information as it becomes available.
Thank you. So you've shared with us that, or the populations, I should say, of who should get the vaccination first. Can you tell us, if I don't have any underlying medical conditions, should I go and get the vaccine immediately?
What I would say to that is you shouldn't go and get it immediately. The experts have already decided that there should be a phased approach. Those that are most at risk for getting COVID-19 or having serious consequences from COVID-19 should be among the first to get the vaccination. And as you saw, the people who are on the front lines were listed as pretty much number one. It does include those who are frail, those who are in older age groups, and those who have conditions that we know put their immune system at risk. So if you're relatively healthy and you continue to practice prevention, you can probably wait and let those others get their vaccinations first. And then when you're offered the vaccine, that would be an appropriate time for you to take it.
Thank you. Here's another one. What happens if I get a reaction after the first COVID-19 shot?
Great question. Well, based on the information that's been made available, if you have an allergic reaction, a significant allergic reaction, you should not take the second dose. Actually, studies reveal that you get some protection from the first shot, but the second shot seals the deal and gives your immune system the opportunity to build up enough protection. So I would say speak with your health provider, because if you have a reaction, the provider will be able to advise you in your situation whether or not you should proceed with the second vaccination.
Will I need to get another COVID vaccine in the future or every year, just like the flu vaccine?
These are great questions. Thank you for that question. Well, at this time, the answer is still unknown. It's unclear how long the protection will last. Remember, I said that time will tell us more information about this vaccination's impact. We rushed through the steps. We didn't skip any, and we didn't shortcut, but we accelerated how quickly we went from step 1 to step 2 to step 3. So we're kind of at the beginning of step 4, and we still have some time until step 4 is concluded. And then we'll have more information about the longevity of our protection. But this will be something under study for quite some time. Even the people who were enrolled in the vaccination trials, they're going to be monitored for 2 years from when they got their vaccination. So this is going to be an evolving situation. And as the information becomes available, it will be shared.
Thank you. Now, I believe I heard you mention in regards to the flu shot, is it possible and can I get the flu shot as well as the COVID-19 shot this season?
Well, I would certainly hope that you do get both, especially if you're offered a COVID-19 vaccine, but you should not take them at the same time. The recommendations are that you take the shots 14 days apart. This gives your body a chance to develop antibodies, and if there's any reactions, those will be known so that you wouldn't be confused about which vaccine caused a problem, if any. So with any other shot, not only the flu shot, but there are some who are still getting information about a pneumonia shot, and there are other vaccinations out there. So the overall recommendations are take one at a time, spaced 14 days apart.
Thank you. We have some questions coming in from the chat, if I may pivot to those for you. The first question is, greetings, Dr. Hunter Buskey. Post-herd immunity, do you foresee the wearing of masks, social distancing, etc., remaining a part of our new normal? And if you can speak to it, for how long?
Right now, we're still in mitigation mode. We are wearing masks. We are washing our hands. We are watching our distance. And until the experts tell us that it's safe to lower that bar, we should not assume that it's going to go away anytime soon. So even with the vaccination, once we hopefully achieve 70% of the population, let's let our experts advise us about how we will resume our behaviors pre-COVID.
Thank you. We have another question in regards to the dosages. One of our participants wants to know if, and make sure I got this right, the vaccine requires 2 doses. What is the mechanism to ensure that you'll get both doses? And part 2 is, what is the risk if you only receive 1 dose? Do you have to start from scratch? In other words, do you have to start over again?
Okay, great questions. So everyone who's given the vaccine is given a vaccination card. And some of you may have seen those photos as they're filling social media. Everyone's showing off their card with their vaccine #1 on it, with their information. Some of us that are old enough remember the yellow vaccination cards back in the old days.
I have
Okay.
one.
So you're going to get your vaccination card, and depending on where you get the vaccination, there's going to be outreach to remind you to get your second shot at the appropriate time, whether it be 21 days or 28 days. And so if you miss the shot, I believe the recommendations are now that you still have a wiggle room of a few days, up to 1 week, but one should not go beyond an additional 7 days before they get that second shot. But I'm sure as we learn more information from the CDC and the FDA and other experts, they'll advise us on how to approach someone who has a long lapse after their first vaccination if they don't get the second one timely.
Thank you. Here's another great question. If you have the antibodies, do you need to take the vaccine?
Well, thank you for that. I'm not sure what the point of that question, if it means about antibodies because you had COVID-19, but if you did and you have antibodies because you had the actual COVID disease, the recommendations are that yes, you should get vaccinated.
Can employers mandate vaccination? Is this something that you have heard about, Dr. Hunter Buskey, at all?
Well, from what I've heard, that employers may mandate certain things as a condition of employment. And that's going to be based on specific criteria that an employer would institute. Now, can anyone be forced to take the vaccine is a different question. And again, those are going to be issues that are going to be dealt with one-on-one based on specific criteria and personal choice, health-related issues, among some other things. So when it comes to employers, I'm sure that they will be clear in articulating what they would like from their employees. But I'm going to try to stay out of the legal issues for tonight, if that's okay.
Of course, absolutely. What about, or do you have any information on people who might currently have pneumonia, which we know damages the lungs? Would that impact the vaccination at all?
Well, if someone has an active condition, some infection or some problem that's not under good medical control, that would be a perfect time for them to talk with their healthcare provider because they would have to weigh the risk and the benefit of the vaccination. And again, if someone is at extreme risk for the consequences of COVID-19 disease, that risk is going to be weighed against the benefits of getting the vaccination for protection. But that's going to be decided on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you. In regards to pivoting back to essential workers, and we know that that population is pretty vast. And again, we're thankful for all of the essential workers who have put their lives on the line to keep our country moving. Do you know by any chance when and where teachers or educators stand in the phase of receiving the vaccination?
Well, actually, educators were recommended in phase 1C. So as the rollout continues, educators are actually listed there. And so I know that there are lots of types of educators. So I don't have the specifics right now in front of me, but I would direct you to the CDC website where you can see how they came to the decision of adding educators to that group. But I believe they're considered essential workers in the definition of the essential workers.
Thank you. Oh, here's another great question. Can you, and I hope you can answer this one, can you identify any significant differences between the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines?
Wow, okay. Now this is getting chemical. So the basis for both of those vaccines are mRNA with the spiked proteins as I described before. But there are stabilizing chemicals in both of those compounds That's what makes it different about how they're transported and stored. And it's those minute differences that make them, the different vaccines. So the actual core compound is similar, but the stabilizing chemicals, I think there are 3 or 4 differences between the two, which is what makes them different. But in essence, they're both going to protect you almost equally against COVID-19 disease.
Thank you. You took me straight back to Chem 101. Here's another great question in regards to if I have taken the shot, if I've taken the vaccination, do I still have to wear the mask?
Okay, we are still in mitigation mode. So there's no one that's going to tell you to stop wearing your mask and stop washing your hands and stop watching your distance until the experts tell us it's safe to do so. So getting the vaccine is not a free pass. It doesn't mean you get out of jail card. No, indeed. It just means that you are building your personal immunity to if you're exposed, and that, hopefully not to get the disease. But that doesn't mean you let your guard down.
Thank you. Can you share with us where we can find the number of African-American participants and the breakdown in demographics who participated in the original trials?
Okay, now I can't say that I have that website on the tip of my tongue, but I would start with the CDC website, and then they will share with you information about the Pfizer information and the Moderna information. And it also will list some of the other companies that are undergoing vaccination trials at this very moment. And they actually will break down by ages, by conditions, by ethnicity. And in both Moderna and Pfizer, they had similar characteristics for the people that volunteered. And that's very, very important because everyone wants to see that the study participants mirror the population. And they tried very hard. And although they didn't get to the target of about 14%, they got close to 10% each.
Thank you. Another great question from our audience. I've heard you can be vaccinated and still spread the disease. Is that true?
Well, that's an interesting question. I'm not sure how to actually answer that. It would probably be, I could conceive of a case that someone who may have been exposed to the virus, but not yet test positive, get the vaccine and could be shedding virus at that time. So that would be a very narrow window. I mean, it could be possible, but I'm not really sure if that's going to be a case that we would see.
Here's another good one. Should individuals with autoimmune diseases and taking autoimmune suppressant meds, such as biologics, take the vaccine? Do you have any information on that, Dr. Hunter-Buskey?
Well, yes. And there are some specific risk groups that may be in that category. I'm just going to name a few. For example, someone who has an autoimmune condition, or someone who's on the biologic meds that was just mentioned. There are individuals with chronic conditions like HIV disease. There are others that may have things like sickle cell disease or other things that are chronic conditions. And there may be significant concern because these individuals would be at higher risk for contracting a serious consequence from COVID-19 disease. So my first reference would be talk to your health professional. Studies show, and some of the research has shown, that most people trust their own health provider. So that would be the first resource to go to and talk about your particular case with them. And then from there, follow the recommendations.
Thank you. Are you aware of any animal products in the vaccine that you're able to share?
I don't have that level of detail with me regarding animal products. I know that in some cases, these chemicals were tested on animals, but I don't believe that animals are actually involved in the formation of the vaccine.
I'm going to pivot to another question. I'm an emergency room nurse and have a child with a chronic medical condition. Does my child need to be vaccinated? And if so, when?
That's another great question. Well, again, applause to being that emergency room nurse. And hopefully your child has not had any issues related to you working on the front line through this, 7, 8, 9 months at this time. Right now, we don't have enough information to recommend that children should be vaccinated. There may be some, but right now that is not the way the Pfizer vaccine or the Moderna vaccine were tested in the trials. Right now, trials are being done for children and others, which include pregnancy. So, more to come on that. We should all be attentive. And as I suggest, frequently check the CDC website, because as they learn information about target populations, they are posting it.
Thank you. Do you have any information? We have another question coming from inside the chat in regards to recombinant DNA. Recombinant DNA.
Yes, so I don't have information on that tonight regarding where that stands as far as the current vaccines that have been authorized for emergency use authorization. These were mRNA-based vaccines, but the recombinant DNA is something else that's being evaluated, and more information about that will be forthcoming.
One of our last questions that I've received thus far, for our pet lovers and our pet owners, can my pet get COVID-19?
Wow. Well, there have been some rare instances where COVID-19 has been cultured or found in some pets, some dogs, and I think even cats. But there's no evidence that shows that COVID-19 is going from pet to owner or from owner to pet. But again, as we continue to follow this virus, we'll keep watching, and hopefully that will not be the case.
Thank you. And I believe I shared with you the other day when I took my dog to get her vaccinations, her yearly vaccinations this past June, what was sitting right at the top of the list but Corona. So I think they might have been protected a little bit before we were protected from the virus. I'm scrolling through and I don't have any more questions at this time, Dr. Hunter Buskey. Do you have any closing remarks you'd like to share with our audience?
Well, again, I hope that this information has been helpful. People may still not have made up their mind, and that's okay, because this is going to go on for months. We can't vaccinate everyone at the same time. But hopefully when you're facing that decision and you and your family have to make a decision, that you'll make it based on science and not on hearsay, and that you've done your research and understand and take responsibility for the decision that you make. And, hopefully we'll continue to have forums such as this, if not hosted by us or others, that you can attend and get continuing education and information that will help inform you.
Thank you. So on behalf of the ladies of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, Delta Mu Zeta chapter, all of this information will be available to you on our chapter website, which is www.deltamuzeta.org. President Yard, do you have any closing remarks?
I would just like to thank everyone for attending this event, and to thank Dr. Buskey for, providing this information for us so that we can make wise decisions about if we should take the vaccine or not. And I'll also like to thank our international president for taking time out of her schedule to attend this event also. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Madam Grand, do you have any closing remarks?
I also want to give thanks to Dr. Robin Hunter Buskey. This was an excellent presentation. I have heard this before, but I always like to hear her speak. She's very deliberate. She's very calming, and she has the information that you may need to make these wise decisions. So I want to thank you, Dr. Busky, and I want to thank everyone for joining the Ladies of Delta Mu Zeta chapter this evening. And I would like to wish each and everyone a very happy and safe and healthy holiday.
Thank you, Madam Grand. And thank you everyone for being here this evening. We hope that you are able to walk away from this session well armed with information. And again, please visit our website where Dr. Hunter Busky's presentation will be available. And if you have any more questions, you can post them in the Q&A and she will get to them as soon as humanly possible. Thank you and have a good night. Happy holidays.